Welcome everyone, and a good Erev Yom Tov, as we are in a very busy time before Succos. But a very important preparation for Succos is what to have in mind when you sit in the Sukkah. We want to thank our sponsors, the Rubin family, that made for the Shabbos Table segment possible with the tefillah that they should be zeicha to a ben zachar, healthy ben zachar, and for atzlacha and ruchnius gashmias, and for their co-sponsor, a wonderful woman, sponsoring the shir with the tefillah that her two daughters should become a kala and find the right zivik quickly and easily. We make a shechianu, v'kimanu, v'giyanu, lazman hazeh. But we really should realize how lucky we are. I mean, imagine if somebody told me, you could fly to Hebron and go to the Me'oras HaMachpelah. Wow, the Me'oras HaMachpelah. And then they tell you, you could go to David HaMelech's resting place. And you could go to Yosef in Shechem. Wow. Tonight, we'll sit in the sukkah and we'll be visited by the Ushpis and Kaddishim themselves. I mean, and that's just one aspect of the privilege of sukkah. The Paiton, those are the extra tefillahs that most people don't say in the Mauser, says, Bal tehi mitzvah sukkah beinecha kala. Let not the mitzvah of sukkah be light in your eyes. Ki keneged kol ha-mitzvahs das chukoseh shkula. For it corresponds to all the mitzvahs. Now, in what way is sukkah shkula ketayah mitzvahs? So the simple explanation is, as the Vilna Gaon says, there's very, very few mitzvahs that we enter with our entire body. There are certain mitzvahs we do with our hand, there's certain mitzvahs we do with our head, right? But there's very few mitzvahs that we enter with our entire body. The Vilna Gaon actually says there are two other mitzvahs, Yeshivas Eretz Yisrael and going into the mikveh. But he says we do the mitzvah of sukkah even with the shoes on our feet. And we bring our entire ala ramache varav, the shin samach egidov, like the Klozimik Rebbe used to say, mit the ramache varav and shesagid. And we bring it, it envelops us in the mitzvah. Pardes Yosef says that's why the Gemara in Avodah Zarah tells us that al-achris hayamim, at the end of days, when the Goyim will say, T'nana lanu merash, give us another chance. So Hashem will test them with sukkah. Why sukkah? Because of this reason. Because you put your whole body into it. It's chaka like all the mitzvahs. Ramosha, my Rebbe Zechtzad v'Kodesh Brachas Chusi Yogan Aleinu, and the Darash Moshe says that when it says that it's keneged kol mitzvahs, it refers to what the sukkah represents. The mindset that the sukkah represents, that we leave our diras keva, our permanent abode, our home, and we go into a temporary abode at the beginning of the year, to remember that this world is only a prosdar. It's only a hallway. It's only a corridor. And it's from the corridor that we go into the permanent home of Olam Haba, of the next world. And therefore, Ramosha says that if a person has that attitude about Sukkos, that this world is a preparation, then that changes our attitude of all the mitzvahs. Because then we understand that they are the purpose that we're put in this world. The mitzvah of sukkah is a tremendous protection. You know, when we say the tefillah upon going into the sukkah, there's a special tefillah that we say. Some people say it every night. Some people say it all the time. But there's a tefillah that we say. Some people have it hanging on their sukkah, but you have it in your mauser. It's good to bring the mauser. There's a tefillah you say about the sukkah, the Hashem, please, Yechoshev li zos. Let this be considered for me, ki'ilu hirchakti nidayt, as if I went on wandering, as if I went into exile. And the explanation of this is a tremendous protection of the sukkah. You see, sukkah comes right after the chasima, the seal of Yom Kippur. And a mature person is afraid. Maybe I got a seal, God forbid this year, that I would have to leave my house to go to the hospital, to go to the emergency room. This year, for the first time in my life, I was in the emergency room in the hospital. Or maybe a person, God forbid, will have to leave their house. They'll get in trouble with the law and they'd have to go to jail, even for a short time. Or maybe a person, God forbid, would get divorced and has to leave his house. Or maybe a person will have a fire, God forbid, and be chased out of their house. Or maybe a person will have monetary problems and the bank will take away their house. Or maybe a person will have to go for parnasa far away from his home. We don't want any of these things. So we have a mechanism in Yiddishkeit that dates back all the way to Noach. It says that Noach also deserved to be punished during the flood. And in the flood they were punished with gopherus, with sulfur. Instead, Hashem put him in a teva of gopher. He put him in a gopher teva. And the gopher wood was instead of the gopherus. So Hashem gave something instead. Many people have the minig. Some people don't know why it's done. But you go to shul, and Erev Yom Kippur, the shamish is sitting by a table, and he's giving out cake. And people ask him for a piece of cake, and he hands them a piece of cake. Now the purpose of that is that in case we should have to ask and beg, it should be chal on the fact that the shamish gave us the cake. That should be the psak of the begging, should be that begging that we do. And of course, this is the idea of an afruf. When we have an afruf, we do this odd thing. Everybody starts pelting the chazan with bags. Why are we throwing things at the chazan? What do you want from the guy? The answer is, we say, if there should be in your future that things would be hurled at you and problems should be thrown at you, it should be fulfilled with everybody throwing at you now. And therefore we say, and this is such an important kavanah for men and women, Yechoshev li zos, my going out of my house into sukkah, if there should be a reason that I have to leave my house, let it not be to a hospital. Yechoshev li zos kilu chakti nedai. This should be my leaving. This should be my wandering for the year. It's a very important kavanah. Now, it's interesting that the first place that we saw this was by the Teva of Noach. Because if you look in the Zohar says that the sukkah is the bechina of the Tevas Noach. The sukkah is a kin to the shelter that the Teva gave to Noach. There's a Zohar that way. As the lashon of the Zohar says, "Na ma Tevas Noach la'agna," just like the Teva of Noach was for protection, Af Sukkah la'agna. The Sukkah was also protection. When we were in the Midbar, and the terrible rays of the sun in the desert would have dehydrated us, the Sukkah protected us. Sukkah protected us from the missiles, the thousands or perhaps hundreds of thousands of arrows that the Mitzrim shot at us. It protected us from the snakes and scorpions and other dangers of the desert. So there's a similarity between the Teva of Noach and the Sukkah. And it's interesting that the Shem Mishmuel says that just like it says by the Teva, that not everybody could get into the Teva. Animals came to the Teva, and the Teva was not koileit oisan, didn't let them in. If you didn't have sin, you were accepted. If you had sin, you weren't accepted. Shem Mishmuel says that's why we celebrate Sukkot right after Yom Kippur. We were all cleansed. So therefore the Sukkah accepts us. I always talked for over 40 years, probably close to 50 years now, I always said that people should make decorations for the Sukkah, clouds, and small pillars of fire, because you're supposed to think about the Hanani HaKavod. Those decorations would remind us. There's nothing wrong with putting up little arcs, because the Sukkah, says the Zohar, has the Bechina of the Teva. Also, it's very interesting that we know that the Teva had the Kedusha of the Mishkan. That's one of the reasons why they weren't allowed to have marital relations in the Teva, besides the fact that the world was suffering. And because of that Kedushas Mishkan, that's one of the reasons why it took Noach 120 years to build the Teva. The Medrash says, not only because he wanted them to see it and give them 120 years to do tshuva, and he told them that God is going to bring a flood, but also the Medrash says because since it had the Kedusha of the Mishkan, you weren't supposed to cut the wood, so he grew the wood to the size of the dimensions of the Teva. Fascinating Medrash. It's brought down, Taka, that the Sukkah has the Kedusha of the Chil. Chil was an area in the Azara where Goyim were not allowed to go. And that's the reason why it says that it's preferable not to invite a guy in your Sukkah. Your neighbor, your guy wants to see your Sukkah, show it to him before Sukkahs or after Sukkahs. Wants to see the Sukkah. You don't have a choice if you have an aid for medical reasons or whatever. You don't have a choice. Waiters by a simcha, a bris in the Sukkah. But preferably we don't bring Goyim into the Sukkah. The same reason that Yitzchak, who is an Oila Tamima and is not allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael, is allowed to go into the Sukkah. Because the Sukkah has not only Kedushas Eretz Yisrael, but it has even more. It has the Kedusha of the Chil, like the Teva of Noach. I want to add that we know that the Sukkah, which is L'Zeichen Hanani HaKavod, the clouds of glory that protected us, I pointed out many times that it's very mystifying why Sukkot is 7 days. It's 40 years in the desert. 40 is not divisible by 7. What does it have to do with 7? Pesach is 7 days because we went out, and 7 days later we had Kriyas Yamsuf. Shavuos is 1 day, 2 days in Chutz La'aretz, because Mount Torah. But why is Sukkah 7 days? Where does 7 come from? So the Sefer Matamim, which is one of the major sources for Minhagei Yisrael, says it's because there were 7 clouds. One on top of us, one below us that conveyed us like a ship. The 4 sides, that's 6, and one that went in front to level the ground and to kill the snakes and the scorpions. So the Hanani HaKavod is the central theme of Sukkot. And the Hanani HaKavod came b'schus Aaron. And that tells us a very big mission statement of Sukkot. Ufreis aleinu sukkah shleimecha Aaron was the great man of peace. Oyev Shalom, V'roidev Shalom. When Aaron died, it says, Vayivku Oisai Kol Beis Yisrael. Everybody cried for him when Aaron died. And that's Cain. That's why the Chofetz Chaim says we have to be very careful not to get angry in the sukkah. It's the antithesis of what sukkah stands for. And that's Tevis Noach. The Zohar says that it's Bechinas Tevis Noach. That's Tevis Noach. Because Noach was Motzah Cain. He found favor in everybody's eyes. That's that mission statement of Cain and Shalom. That's a very big part of the aim of Sukkot. It's interesting. It says again in that tefillah, which we say when before going into the sukkah, it says it should be ulamachse ulamistar, a protection and a shelter, mizerem umimater, from storms and showers. It's very interesting. The Arugas Habaysim, Zechat Tzadik Levrach, Succos Table, says a very clever thing. We said that the sukkah is all the Ramach mitzvahs. He says we want to make it clear that we're doing just Hashem's mitzvahs, no more and no less. He says Zerem is one less than Ramach, right? Zerem is Reish Mem Zayin, and Motor is one more than Ramach. Instead of Reish Mem Ches, it's Reish Mem Tes. Also, the Gaon points out that the dimensions of a minimum sukkah is 7 by 7 and 10 tefachim high. So 7 by 7 is a square area of 49 times the height of 10 is 490. Says the Vilna Gaon, Zechat Tzadik Levrach, Succos Table, the gematria of 490 is Tomim. Tomim is 490. Tov is 400. Mem is 40. It's 440. Yud is 10. 450. Another mem, and the end of mem is another 40. It's 490. Tomim tiyeh Hashem alikecha. We should be perfect with Hashem, like Noach, right? Noach was a tzaddik Tomim. Now, of course, we cannot fail to mention the famous Bach. Succos Table Shivas Yamim. The Bach had the zechiyah that this halacha became known in his name. Succos Table Shivas Yamim. In the sukkah you should sit 7 days. Man yedu doreisechem ki besukkos yishavti es b'nei Yisrael. In order that your generation should know that I put you in Sukkos in Anoni HaKavod when I took you out of Mitzrayim. Says the Bach, since it says Man Yedu, in order that you should know, the halach is you have to have this in mind. Over here, mitzvah srichas kavana. You have to have a mind when you're eating in the sukkah to remember the great miracle of the Anoni HaKavod. It was a great miracle. So you'll say in the night there was no heat, no sun. Why do we eat in the sukkah in the night? Because like many climates, in the night it was freezing cold. There would have been frostbite. So we have in mind the protection of the Anoni HaKavod. We would have been dehydrated in the day, frostbitten in the night. The Anoni HaKavod, there were tarantulas, there were scorpions. The Anoni HaKavod protected us. The Anoni HaKavod protected us from, it was a cloaking device from the enemies. The Anoni HaKavod acted as a cruise ship. We were 40 years in the Midbar. We didn't travel. We were like in a cruise boat. The Anoni HaKavod conveyed us. Now, the Chofetz Chaim over here adds an important and critical chinuch reminder. This is a chinuch reminder that we've spoken about many times, but he uses this central pasuk of Sukkos to remind us of the message. Ba'sukkos teishvu shivas yamim. Sit in the sukkah 7 days. L'man yedu daresechen. In order that your generations will know this information about the Hananei HaKavod. Says the Chofetz Chaim. The only way your children will know, the only way it will be inculcated into their central data bank, only way it will be injected into their being is if you sit in the sukkah. Just telling them is not enough. They have to see you do it. And that's the way it works with chinuch all the time. Like the Chofetz Chaim says, it says in Kriya Shema, "V'lamadatem osam es b'neichem," and the word osam is written defective. It should have had a vav, but it's written just aleph saf mem. Says the Chofetz Chaim because it's supposed to be read also. It can be read also. V'lamadatem atem. If you learn, then your children will learn. The famous lesson of the Kotzker Rebbe. If you yell at your children to learn, you'll accomplish that when they become parents, they'll know how to yell at their children. But if you want your children to learn, you want your children to be Mavasedra, when they're falling asleep Friday night, they have to fall asleep to their father laning. If they fall asleep to their father laning, they'll be Mavasedra. If they see their father, he's very tired, but he takes out a Gemara and he learns, they'll learn when they're very tired. That's the best way to teach. The best way to teach is by example. Remember we said, that we say in Kriya Shema, the words that you have on your heart, then vishinantam levanecha. Then you'll be able to teach them to your children. If you're a Hesa baseball fan, you'll make a baseball fan out of your children. Because it's something that's a mother that likes to shop will make shoppers out of her daughter. And therefore, our children have to see. They have to see that we get excited about the sukkah. We're going into sukkah. Oh, let's make the sukkah beautiful. Now, of course, it begs the question, why do we make a memory for the Hananei HaKavod? There were other great miracles. Perhaps the most stupendous miracle was the Be'er Shel Miriam, the well of Miriam. I mean, it was a rock. Changes a rock into a marsh of water. Chalamish, the flintstone, to a stream of water. But it wasn't just water. It was enough water to give 3 million people and their animals for 40 years. More than Niagara Falls. 3 million people. Pretty stupendous miracle. A mobile rock went around with them in the desert. I mean, there was no pipes, no rain. It was amazing. Again, it's like Tevas Noach. You know, in the Teva there's no report of any water source. It was also miraculous. And then you had the miracle of the man, food coming down from heaven. It begs the question, why do we only make a memory for Hananei HaKavod? So if you look in the Mishnah Berurah says, well, the Hananei HaKavod happened first, and it's a trigger that we should speak about the other miracles. That's the way the Mishnah Berurah learns. Others learn that we can't make a zecher for a rock. We don't have a rock that gives water. We don't have food from heaven. But we could put up a bamboo, sukkah mat, and it does protect us from the sun. It does protect us a little bit from the cold. But there is a beautiful chidah And I'm going to conclude with this Chidah. Again, I want to thank the Rubin family for making this share, which will be available throughout Yom Tov. This is pertinent anytime you listen to it. You share it with your family, the Rubin family, and this fine Talmidah of mine that made this share possible, for a Ben Zacher, and respectively for Shidduchim for her children. The Chidah says that the only thing that we got without complaining is the Ananei HaKavod. We never complained for that. For food we complained, ma noichel. For drink we complained, ma nishte. Something that comes through complaining is not worth commemorating. Complaining is the antithesis of what Sukkot stands for. Sukkot is man simchoseinu. A person that's happy concentrates on what they have, not what they're missing. They're not usually complaining. They're sameach b'chelka. And therefore it's fitting the Ananei HaKavod, which came throughout the complaining, to be the central focus of this Yom Tov of Simcha. Let me take the opportunity to wish all of you Eizman Simchuseinu, Mirza Hashem, Motzi Yom Tov. We'll learn 2 blot of Daf Yomi at 9:15. Thank you for joining us, and have a truly happy and inspiring Yom Tov.